Hello, and thanks for watching this video. Today, I am excited to share with you yet another thing that I've learned about the OpenAI Agents SDK framework. Today is all about how to use this framework with non-OpenAI models. So, for example, today I will show you how to use this framework using a Gemini model and a DeepSeek model. Just so you know, everything that we do in this video is saved in my GitHub repository, and there's a link in the description to this code. This is all going to be in Python, and we are using a Python Jupyter notebook in the VS Code as usual, but it can be any IDE of your choice. But first things first, you will have to install your OpenAI Agents SDK package. Similar to my other videos, we will use the python.env package to authenticate with our model providers. If you're interested in the documentation, here's the links right here. Here's the GitHub repo for the Agents SDK framework and the documentation right here. So let's keep going. We'll continue with our imports from our packages. A few classes that I want to highlight from these imports are, well, we'll be using agent to create an agent as usual, and runner to run our agents. Trace shows us our logs and our traces, and then we will be using this OpenAI chat completions model to create a model object out of other non-OpenAI models. We are also using async OpenAI from the OpenAI Python SDK. The async OpenAI class is used to create a client that acts as a messenger between our code and the AI provider. And I'll show you more of what that looks like in just a minute. So let's start by making sure that we are able to load in our API keys. Just going to briefly glance over this. What you will need to do if you are following along exactly as I'm showing you, you will need to let me go down here to platform.deepseek.com and aistudio.google.com and create accounts and add a payment method and create an API key. This allows us to use those Google models and those DeepSeek models. From there, go into .env. I'm not going to show you that because that has my API keys, but if I go into .env demo, you will want to add your Google API key right here with these exact keywords and the DeepSeek API key right here, in addition to, of course, your OpenAI API key, which is found at platform.openai.com. So we'll be running the same task with all three of these AI providers today. So if you are following along, be sure to create those accounts and those tokens and add them to your .env file right here, using those same keywords. I'm going to minimize that and let's keep going. Well, first, actually, let's just save out the API keys right here into variables that we can use later. And now we'll keep going. So the way that this works is other model providers have saw the success that the Agents SDK framework was having and wanted to provide a way for someone using the OpenAI Agents SDK framework to use their models. So what they did is they created these endpoints that are compatible with the Agents SDK framework. And for Gemini, it is this one right here. And for DeepSeek is this one right here. And oftentimes you'll actually see that they do have more than one compatible endpoint, but these are the ones we are using for today to authenticate with Gemini or with Gemini models or Google models and with DeepSeek. And then I just provided a list of other endpoints for other providers that you can explore down here. If you're not sure about the endpoint, quick Google or a quick GPT prompt can find you the correct endpoints to use for whatever model you're using. Not all model providers have this endpoint. I think most do, a lot do. Some work better with the Agents SDK than others, so just keep that in mind. But they do work pretty well with Gemini and DeepSeek from everything that I've tried so far. So let's keep going. The next thing we need to do is create a client. Basically, this tells us how to connect with the AI provider. Again, like I said earlier, it's that messenger between your code and the provider. It allows you to send the request and get the response back. So all we have to do that is use this async OpenAI class, and then we pass in the base URL, which we saved up above. That's just the compatible endpoint, and then our API key that we also saved. So we do that for both the Gemini URL and the DeepSeek URL. So I'll run that, and that will create our clients. While it's doing that, I will move on. So the next thing we need to do is we need to take those clients and use them as an argument inside of this OpenAI chat completions model class. This creates a model object that we can then pass to an agent. So all we have to do is provide the name of the model we want to use. So for this Gemini one, we give it a Gemini model. For the DeepSeek one, we give it a DeepSeek model. And then for the OpenAI client argument, we give it the respective clients that we created above. So that looks good so far. Now we are simply going to create an agent using those model objects that we just created. So we'll start off with Gemini, and we're just going to call it poet. Use our agent class to create the agent object, and then give it a name. We'll call it Gemini poet. Give it some instructions. We say you are a poet who creates beautiful poetry, and we're going to do the same exact thing for Gemini, DeepSeek, and OpenAI, just to compare the three. And then we say Gemini model, which again is the one that we created up here using the OpenAI chat completions model. So let's go ahead and run that. We use runner.run to run that, and we say write a haiku about artificial intelligence. So nothing mind-blowing here, but this is just a tutorial about how to leverage other non-OpenAI models using the Agents SDK framework. And there you go. We see that it did create a haiku about artificial intelligence. Let's run down to DeepSeek. Same exact thing. Let's create the agent. Let's give it a name, give it the same instructions, give it the same prompt and then run it with runner.run and print the results. Oh, and again, want to point out that we passed in that DeepSeek model that we created up here. So it looks like that ran. And yeah, there we go. We have our second haiku about artificial intelligence. Now I'll let you decide which one is better. And then last but not least, let's do it with OpenAI. So this one's a little bit more straightforward when you're using OpenAI models with the Agents SDK framework. You just have to pass in any of the OpenAI model names. You don't have to go through the process of creating the client or the model object. That's all being handled with the framework itself behind the scenes. So let's go ahead and run that. And there you go. So last thing we want to do is we want to go and look at the traces just as proof to see what we're doing. I always like to do that. It helps me understand what's going on behind the scenes, helps me double check my work. I definitely recommend looking at the traces when you're working with this framework. So that's platform.openai.com. That's the same place you create your API key. Then you go to logs, and then you go to agent traces. So if you look, I do have a lot of other traces, but these most recent three, we have our Gemini poet, we have our DeepSeek poet, and we have our GPT poet. I am going to open these up in 3 separate tabs. These ones are not that interesting when you're working with larger, more complex workflows that use tools and handoffs. It gets a lot more interesting to look at the logs or the traces. So we see this one was our Gemini poet. And if we click into this one right here, then we see the base URL is that endpoint that we used. And then we see the input and we see the output. And then same thing, we switch over. This one is, let's see, it is our DeepSeek trace. And you see that same endpoint that we used. And then you have the input and the output. And then this one is going to be our OpenAI model. So there you have it. Let's go back to the code real quick. Just as a recap, what we did today is we were able to use the OpenAI Agents SDK framework with other non-OpenAI models. And we did that simply by using our compatible endpoints for Gemini and DeepSeek, creating a client to access those models, and then wrapping that client inside of the OpenAI chat completions model class to create an object model that can be used with a Agents SDK agent. And there you have it. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that was helpful. Please like the video if it was, and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Thank you.